Some people think empaths are weak, too emotional, too sensitive, too soft for this world. But psychology tells a completely different story, because the most dangerous person in any room is often the one who feels everything. The dangerous empath is not dangerous because they scream. They are dangerous because they observe. While everyone else is busy talking, reacting, defending, proving, performing, the empath is studying micro-expressions, tone shifts, emotional inconsistencies, hidden intentions, and neuroscience shows this ability is real. Research on mirror neurons suggests certain people process emotional signals with extraordinary sensitivity. Their brains unconsciously absorb emotional information faster than average people. They detect tension before words are spoken. They notice emotional leakage before deception is exposed. That means the empath often knows what someone feels before that person admits it to themselves. And that level of perception becomes terrifying when the empath stops being naive. Because there are two versions of an empath: the healing empath and the awakened empath. The healing empath gives people endless chances. The awakened. Empath studies human nature. At first, empaths usually become targets. Manipulators love emotionally intelligent people because empathy creates patience. Empathy creates forgiveness. Empathy creates understanding. And predators survive through understanding people better than they understand themselves. But eventually something changes. The empath experiences betrayal enough times that their emotional intelligence evolves into pattern recognition. Now they no longer just feel emotions. They predict behavior. This is where the dangerous empath is born. Behavioral psychology shows that humans are extremely repetitive creatures. Most people repeat the same emotional cycles, the same manipulation tactics, and the same defense mechanisms over and over. The empath notices these loops. They notice how insecure people over-explain, how narcissistic people subtly redirect conversations, how guilty people suddenly become overly kind, how deceptive people freeze for half a second before answering direct questions. Most people miss these signals. Empaths don't. And once they see the pattern, they cannot unsee it. That's why dangerous empaths become emotionally detached in ways people don't expect. Not cold, calculated. There's a difference. Cold people stop caring. Calculated empaths still care, but they stop sacrificing themselves for people who weaponize kindness. This transformation changes the empath's body language too. Psychologists know emotional exhaustion alters social behavior dramatically. People who experience chronic emotional betrayal often develop heightened observational awareness. They speak less, watch more, reveal less information, and suddenly everyone around them feels uncomfortable. Not because the empath said something threatening, but because people feel psychologically exposed around them. The dangerous empath has a terrifying ability: silence. Most people cannot tolerate silence because silence forces emotional exposure. Manipulators especially rely on emotional chaos. They need reactions. They need explanations. They need emotional access. The dangerous empath removes all of it. No emotional outburst. No dramatic confrontation. No desperate pleading. Just distance. And distance psychologically destroys people who relied on controlling emotional energy. That's why some of the most emotionally powerful people were born. Become extremely quiet. Not weak, aware. There's another reason dangerous empaths are hard to defeat. They understand pain, and pain creates adaptive intelligence. Studies on trauma and emotional hypervigilance show that emotionally sensitive people often become exceptionally skilled at reading environmental threats. Their nervous systems adapt to detect emotional danger faster than average individuals. In unhealthy forms, this creates anxiety. But in controlled forms, it creates human lie detectors. The dangerous empath enters a room and instantly feels who is competing, who is insecure, who wants approval, who wants control, and who is emotionally unstable. And here's the frightening part. They rarely announce what they know. They simply adjust. That adjustment is power. Because power in psychology is not loudness. Power is emotional self-control. The person who controls their emotional reactions usually controls the interaction. And dangerous empaths eventually master emotional restraint. They learn that reacting emotionally gives manipulative people information. so they stop reacting publicly. Now, the manipulator has no data, no weakness to exploit, no emote. Why-onal opening, no predictable trigger. That unpredictability makes the empath psychologically intimidating. But here's where most people misunderstand the dangerous empath completely. Their greatest weapon is not revenge, it's withdrawal. Once an empath emotionally disconnects, reconnecting becomes nearly impossible. Why? Because emotionally intelligent people attach deeply but detach completely once trust is broken beyond repair. Neuroscience suggests emotional betrayal activates the same pain regions of the brain associated with physical injury. Over time, the brain learns to avoid repeated emotional damage through protective emotional distancing. Most people think danger is loud. They imagine aggression, domination, threats. But psychology has discovered something far more unsettling. The human nervous system fears silent observation more than open conflict. Because when someone reacts emotionally, you can predict them. But when someone only watches, you never know what they understand. And this is exactly why the dangerous empath terrifies people without saying a word. At first glance, they seem harmless, quiet, understanding, emotionally available. But beneath that cowl, surface, something extraordinary is happening inside the brain. Neuroscientists studying emotional intelligence discovered that highly sensitive individuals process facial expressions, tone changes, and emotional signals faster than average people. Some studies suggest the brain can detect emotional inconsistencies in milliseconds before conscious awareness even begins. Think about that. Before someone finishes speaking, the empath's nervous system may already sense deception. And the terrifying part is, most people never realize they are being studied. Research from behavioral psychology shows humans leak emotion constantly. Tiny facial movements called microexpressions reveal fear, guilt, insecurity, and hidden intentions before the conscious mind regains control. A fake smile lasts too long. A confident voice cracks for half a second. A forced laugh arrives too late. Most people miss these signals entirely. The dangerous empath does not. Because while others are focused on words, the empath is focused on patterns, and human beings are creatures of patterns. Studies in neuroscience reveal that nearly 95% of human behavior operates unconsciously. Most people repeat emotional bits every single day without realizing it. The same reactions, the same manipulation tactics, the same insecurities disguised in different forms. The empath notices all of it. They notice how insecure people interrupt constantly because silence makes them feel invisible. They notice how manipulative people ask personal questions but reveal almost nothing about themselves. They notice how jealous people disguise criticism as advice. And once the empath sees the pattern, they cannot stop seeing it. That's when something changes socially. People begin feeling strangely exposed around them. Not because the empath attacked them, because the empath noticed them. Psychologists call this emotional mirroring awareness. Human beings unconsciously fear people who perceive their authentic emotional state. Studies show the brain experiences social exposure similarly to physical danger. Heart rate increases, cortisol rises, defensive behavior activates. In simple terms, being deeply understood can feel terrifying, especially for people hiding behind performance. And modern society is built on performance. Research shows the average person alters their personality depending on who they are around. Different voice, different opinions, different emotional masks. But the dangerous empath tracks emotional consistency instead of personality performance. That means they can often tell when someone is pretending long before others realize it. And this creates an almost supernatural effect. People start saying things like, "I feel like you can read me," but the empath is not reading minds. They are reading behavior. The human body reveals the truth constantly. In fact, neuroscientists discovered the body reacts to stress and deception before language can fully control facial muscles. That means emotional leakage happens automatically. A jaw tightens. Breathing shifts. Eye contact changes. Blink rate increases. The dangerous empath notices these microscopic shifts instinctively, not because they trained for years like an interrogator, but because emotional sensitivity wired their brain to observe survival signals constantly. And this ability often comes from pain. What most people never understand is that dangerous empaths are rarely born peaceful. They are created through emotional overload. Studies on trauma and hypervigilance reveal that emotionally sensitive people exposed to unstable environments often develop heightened observational awareness as a survival adaptation. Their brains become scanning machines. Who is angry? Who is lying? Who is emotionally unsafe? Who is about to explode? The nervous system learns to predict danger before danger arrives. And over time, this transforms into extraordinary social perception. The empath enters a room and immediately senses tension nobody else notices. A fake friendship, hidden resentment, competition disguised as support. And because they feel everything intensely, their intuition becomes frighteningly accurate. But here is where the dangerous empath becomes different from the ordinary empath. They stop reacting immediately. That silence changes everything. Because most people reveal themselves through emotional reactions. When humans become angry, defensive, jealous, or insecure, self-control decreases dramatically. Neuroscience shows emotional arousal weakens rational filtering in the brain, causing hidden emotions to leak into behavior. The dangerous empath understands this unconsciously. So instead of interrupting, they wait. And waiting is psychological power. Because silence creates pressure. The longer our silence lasts, the more uncomfortable, emotionally dishonest people become. Eventually they over-explain, contradict themselves, reveal insecurity, expose motives unintentionally, and the empath simply watches. This is why manipulators often fear emotionally intelligent people. Manipulation depends on emotional confusion. But the dangerous empath studies emotional structure itself. They notice inconsistencies between words and actions. And behavioral science confirms something shocking. Actions predict personality far more accurately than language ever will. Anyone can perform kindness temporarily, but patterns never lie. The dangerous empath understands that repeated behavior is identity. Not promises, not apologies, not emotional speeches, patterns. That's why emotionally intelligent observers become difficult to deceive over time, because they stop listening emotionally and start watching scientifically. And this completely changes the way they move through life. They speak less, reveal less, observe more, not because they are cold, because they learned that information is power. Psychological research shows people who talk excessively often reveal emotional weaknesses unintentionally. Typically, in contrast, highly observant individuals gather information while exposing very little about themselves. That imbalance creates silent control in conversations, and most people never even notice it happening. They leave interactions feeling emotionally analyzed without understanding why. Some even become defensive around the empath for no visible reason, because subconsciously, humans detect observation. We are biologically wired to feel when attention becomes intensely focused on us, and when someone observes without reacting emotionally, it creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates anxiety. That is why calm observers often appear more intimidating than aggressive people. Aggression is predictable. Observation is not. The dangerous empath understands something most people never learn. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. The most powerful person is usually the one paying attention, the one studying emotional energy, behavioral shifts, social dynamics, hidden intentions. And once an empath masters emotional restraint, their perception becomes nearly impossible to manipulate, because now they are no longer drowning in emotions. They are navigating through. Rough them consciously. That transformation is dangerous, not because the empath wants revenge, but because clarity changes human behavior forever. Once someone learns how to truly observe people, they can never return to emotional blindness again. And maybe that is what frightens people most about the dangerous empath. Not their silence, not their intuition, not even their emotional intelligence, but the horrifying realization that while everyone else was busy performing, the empath was quietly seeing the truth the entire time. Nobody becomes a dangerous empath by accident. People think empaths are simply born sensitive, but psychology suggests something darker. The most emotionally perceptive people are often shaped through pain so intense, their nervous system never fully forgets it. and that changes the brain forever. Studies in neuroscience reveal that emotional trauma physically alters neural pathways. The brain becomes hyper-alert to emotional danger, constantly scanning for signs of rejection, betrayal, anger, or deception. In other words, pain trains perception. That's why many dangerous empaths were once the kindest people in the room. The most patient, the most forgiving, the most emotionally available, until life taught them a brutal lesson. Kindness without boundaries attracts predators. Research in behavioral psychology shows manipulative personalities often target highly empathetic individuals because empathy increases tolerance. Empaths naturally try to understand behavior instead of immediately defending themselves. And manipulators survive through emotional confusion. At first, the empath excuses everything. They're just hurting. They didn't mean it. They've been through a lot. But every betrayal leaves a psychological scar. And the human nervous system remembers emotional pain with terrifying accuracy. Brain scans reveal that emotional rejection activates the same regions associated with physical injury. The pain of betrayal is not metaphorical. To the brain, emotional damage and physical damage overlap neurologically. That means every humiliation, every manipulation, every emotional abandonment leaves biological residue inside the body. Elevated cortisol, chronic stress responses, sleep disruption, emotional hypervigilance. Some studies even show prolonged emotional stress weakens the immune system and accelerates aging. Think about that. Certain people can emotionally wound the body itself, and eventually the empath realizes something terrifying. Being emotionally open without protection becomes self-destruction. That realization changes everything, because pain forces evolution. In nature, survival belongs to organisms that adapt fastest to danger. Human psychology works the same way. The empath slowly stops reacting emotionally the way they once did. Not because they stopped caring, but because their nervous system learned caution. Now they notice things they ignored before. The delayed text that suddenly feels intentional. The fake concern hidden inside criticism. The subtle disrespect disguised as humor. The emotional inconsistency between someone's words and actions. And once the empath notices these patterns repeatedly, trust becomes harder to give. Psychologists call this adaptive pattern recognition. The brain builds predictive models from repeated emotional experiences. After enough betrayal, the nervous system starts identifying similar behavioral traits before conscious reasoning even begins. That's why experienced empaths often say, "I had a bad feeling immediately." And science suggests that feeling may be partially real. The subconscious brain processes massive amounts of emotional information beneath conscious awareness. Tiny inconsistencies trigger internal alarm